These intros are always so awkward.
I'll wait an intermission.
Welcome to the show. I hope you all get something out of this both today and in the future. We hope to be doing this on a fairly regular basis and bring you all of the latest news and updates and interviews and highlights and everything else from across SeawolvesNation. My name is Adam Peck. I'm the editor of SeawolvesNation, SeawolvesNation.com, joined by my co-hosts, Jason Mazza, who is a sports reporter for The Statesman, which is the main campus newspaper at Stony Brook University, and Adrian Skolar, who is also a former reporter for The Statesman, sports reporter, and former member of the Stony Brook University marching band, the Spirit of Stony Brook, one of the better resources for Seawolves athletics. And so, yeah, I guess may as well just jump into this. I think on the regular, we'll be bringing you, the way we'll start these shows is to kind of talk about the games that have come and gone in the last week, do a quick breakdown of highlights and scores from across Seawolves athletics, bring you some interviews. Today are joining us for our very first show. We're very excited to have the new athletics director, Shawn Heilbron, who we spoke with earlier this week. We will have that full interview for you right here. And joining us as well is Doric Sam, who reports on basketball for SeawolvesNation and for One Bid Wonders. He'll be on to talk about Stony Brook's newest transfer, Lucas Woodhouse, and what that means for the program next year. So I guess we may as well just get started with the scores of last week. Right after we finished doing our recording last week, which turned into a practice episode, Stony Brook actually had a very terrible weekend. Women's lacrosse opened their NCAA tournament with a win, actually, but quickly followed that up with a loss to, I believe they were the second-ranked team in the country in Maryland. The second seed, or not Maryland, excuse me, Syracuse. They were actually up in Syracuse for round 2 and dropped their second round game 13-6. That's the second year in a row, though, that women's lacrosse has made it to round 2 in the NCAAs. So that was exciting. And then softball. Somebody else needs to talk about softball. It was too depressing. Any takers?
Yeah, sure. Aubrey came into Stony Brook and beat us 2 games in a row, and that was it for softball.
Yeah.
Nothing more needs to be said.
Strike away from winning that second game.
Yeah.
One strike away from winning it.
I think it was the first game, actually. So
Yeah.
Stony Brook came in as the number 1 seed in the conference by a fairly wide margin. They had just been absolutely dominant in conference play. And all they needed to do was win 1 game against Albany to secure their second straight trip to the NCAA tournament, another conference title. And yeah, as Adrian said, they got to the bottom of the 7th inning, or top of the 7th inning against Albany. Needed 1 strike for the win, and Albany hit a walk-off 3-run home run to win game 1, which then set up a final, the second game of the doubleheader. It was game 7 of the America East tournament, and Stony Brook just could not close. Allison Shukrov, I think is how you pronounce her last name, who has been one of the best pitchers in Division I softball all season, just did not have it in that last game. Albany raced out to a pretty big lead and just held on, and that was it. That was the end of the season. Albany is moving on to the NCAA tournament. It had to be Albany, of course. And baseball is the last piece of the puzzle here today. They're actually wrapping up their last game of the regular season right now. They're heading into the 9th inning, up 4-2 over Hartford. Number 1 seed in the America East tournament is on the line. Stony Brook has already clinched at least a share of the regular season title, but if they win today against Hartford, they will secure the regular season title outright and the top seed in the tournament. They are looking to go back to the NCAA tournament for the first time since the College World Series 2 years ago. So we'll be keeping an eye on that score. It should be over in hopefully a few minutes. Again, they're up 2 runs, 4-2 over Hartford. All right. So moving on. As I mentioned earlier at the top of the show, earlier this week, the three of us had an opportunity to speak with Shawn Heilbron, who is the incoming athletics director at Stony Brook University. President Stanley and the rest of the athletics administration announced last week that he will be joining the program from Oregon State University, where he's been for the last 3 years, serving as a senior associate athletics director. Had his hands in a lot of their fundraising opportunities and did a phenomenal job bringing in millions and millions of dollars from donors and other outside groups to the athletics program out in Corvallis. So there's a lot of excitement about his tenure here at Stony Brook. So we'll just, I guess, toss to that interview and then, do a quick debrief and talk a little bit about what he had to say.
So just about a week ago, University President Sam Stanley and the Department of Athletics gathered in the new Stony Brook Arena to introduce Stony Brook fans and athletes and coaches and other athletics personnel to Shawn Heilbron, who is joining us from Oregon State University to assume the role of the new athletics director here at Stony Brook. So joining us now over the phone is Shawn Heilbron. Thank you so much for taking the time, and welcome to SeawolvesNation.
Adam, thank you very much for having me. Very excited to be joining Stony Brook, and look forward to getting out there.
Definitely. So I guess my first question for you, as I mentioned, you're coming to us from Oregon State University, about as far away from Stony Brook as you can get, both geographically and also, from an athletic standpoint as well. Oregon State and the Pac-12, and prior to that, you spent 5 years at UCLA. Obviously, it's a very different atmosphere for Division I athletics. And so I wonder if you can maybe talk a little bit about what the draw was when you accepted the position at Stony Brook, what you saw on Long Island that tempted you.
Well, first of all, what I saw was a university that had accomplished amazing things in 57 years. And, as I looked more at Stony Brook and heard Dr. Stanley talk about his aspirations, and namely to be a top 20 public research institution, I love being a part of aspirational programs, and to be at a place that has been able to accomplish so much in such a short amount of time told me that where we could go in the foreseeable future, there was really no limit to it. And to see the success that had already taken place in athletics with obviously the 2012 World Series team, and basketball being in the NIT, and lacrosse achieving what it's achieved, as well as all the other programs that have been to the NCAA tournament, I see it as a program on the rise, and one that I could come in, work with the staff and coaches, and just continue that upward trajectory. And I really saw it as a great opportunity for me and my family to come to a part of the country that we're excited about, to live on Long Island. I actually have cousins on Long Island. To be that close to the city, it all just came together and was just a perfect fit for me professionally and my family personally. So really, everything I saw about Stony Brook was validated by my visit to campus, by my further conversations with Dr. Stanley, and just meeting the coaches and staff. I just felt like this was a great fit and a place where we could really build something together.
I think one of the questions that we have, but also that, a lot of fans have, I think, is this idea of, continuing on an upwards trajectory. Obviously, for those of us who have been plugged into athletics for a few years, looking back even 5 years from where we were then to where we are now is just a huge amount of growth. But I think there's still a lot of confusion and maybe apprehension as to what exactly the end goal is. Division I college athletics has been kind of a puzzle in the Northeast in particular. And so I wonder if you can maybe talk a little bit about, what the end goal is for you, and what the end goal is, or you think should be for Stony Brook. Are we talking, big time college basketball, similar to what we see at UConn and other nearby schools? Do you think that something like FBS football could even work in the New York City area? It's been a struggle for programs like Rutgers and others in the area. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts as to what, the future has in store.
Well, I think first and foremost, we have to be the best Stony Brook we can be. And, certainly we want to win the conference. We want to win America East titles. We want to win the Colonial in football. I think until we can consistently do that, it's hard to look ahead at where you want to be. I think certainly aspirationally, sure, we'd love to be in a Big Five conference. I know that President Stanley has that vision in mind, but if we're not filling Laval Stadium, it's very difficult to consider yourself able to get 25 to 30,000 people. So we've got to focus on being great today where we're at. We're in a good league in the America East. We're in a good league in the Colonial. We've got to make sure that we give our coaches the resources that they need. I was actually just on the phone with Coach Peichel, and we talked about budgets and some of the things that he needs to take that next step, and we're close. I mean, the exciting thing is we're close. We're not that far off. But we've got to get people invested in our program, and I do think that in the Northeast there's certainly a little different culture around football, but it's very, very important. If you look at what is shaping the NCAA landscape today, it's football. And I said it at the press conference and had said it during my interviews. We have to focus on getting football where it needs to be, because that can take care of your entire department. And I think that is what really helps connect people to the school. So long term, I'd say, I want to win in everything that we do, and whether that's, the Colonial, America East, or at some point down the road, wherever we may land. But right now, let's just be the best program that we can. Let's win consistently. Let's give our student athletes the opportunities to have success, to get jobs when they graduate. And if we win and we draw more people, that's when the conversation about where you go can really start to come into play. But right now, I think we just need to focus on winning conference titles. And once you start to develop that culture on a consistent basis, then you can start, your options open up. But until then, I'd really like to see us fill Laval Stadium on a consistent basis. Obviously, like to see us get to the NCAA tournament in men's and women's basketball, and get to Omaha again for the baseball team, and have all of our programs get to postseason. That's first and foremost.
And Shawn, you mentioned that you really want to see, like, the football team, for example, just fill out Laval before you even think about maybe trying to go at a higher level. But aside from winning, what other things can you, as an athletic director, do you look to do to try to, like, maybe say expand attendance a little more to fill out Laval Stadium?
I think that's a great question, and I know that our staff at Stony Brook has worked very hard over the last several years. Again, when you take a program that was Division III just a short time ago and had taken the leap to Division I, there's a different level of expectation that comes with that. And I think our staff at Stony Brook has done a great job connecting with the community, connecting with sponsors, getting people on board. I think moving into Stony Brook Arena is a huge step for the program. But I think one thing I can do, and also in talking to our staff back there, is my background is in fundraising and marketing, and helping lend a creative set of eyes to what we're doing. And I see myself just coming in and being an extension of the team that we have there. We have to connect people to Stony Brook, and a lot of people talked about that it's a area dominated by professional sports. I understand that. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and worked at UCLA for 5 years, which it's all dominated by pro sports. I think we can be Long Island's program, and that should be our immediate goal. There are 3 million people on Long Island. There are 3 million people right now in the state of Oregon, and if we can just work on connecting with more people, more families, more donors, more sponsors, I think we're going to be able to achieve a lot. But really, our staff is doing a lot of great things right now, and I just want to help them kind of move things forward and be supportive of them so that we can take our program to the next level from that marketing and external side.
Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
You're talking about being the best Stony Brook can be today. Do you have any, what are your immediate, plans for the near future for upgrades to facilities, or are you happy with where they are now?
Well, I think we have great facilities as I looked at them, but there are certainly things that we can do. I know expanding Laval Stadium is a topic of conversation, as is an indoor practice facility. I look at Joe Nathan Field and see a beautiful playing surface, but in terms of fan amenities, there are some things that we can do. I think there's a lot of opportunity to build, but I really think that we are in a great place right now from a facility standpoint. But you're always looking to grow, and the way I look at facilities is, what will best give our student athletes an opportunity to have success. And the areas that they live in, locker rooms, training areas, absolutely critical. I was walking around with Coach Peichel, Coach Priori, the other day, and we went into the training area, and there was a softball team getting ready to play their conference tournament game, and it was tight. I mean, it was a tight space. So I think we can look at areas to upgrade, but I think our facilities today, I think they're fantastic and give us a chance to win. We'll always look to grow and build and expand upon what we have, but I think right now we have a great setup with facilities that allow us to win our conference.
Sure. One of the things that you said that really kind of interested me at your press conference last week was that, after spending time on campus and getting a chance to meet, university personnel and athletics personnel, that your assessment was that there's really nothing broken at Stony Brook, that, the previous, administration has done a pretty good job of setting us up today, which is certainly encouraging to hear. I wonder if you can have identified perhaps any obstacles that are kind of in the way. Obviously, you spoke a little bit about, getting fans activated on campus and around Long Island, but I'm interested to see if you, foresee any potential obstacles in the short term.
I really don't see any obstacles. I see a lot of opportunities. I see a need to get the students more engaged with all of our programs, coming to games on a regular basis. The fact that we have 25,000 students, but have football games where we draw 5,000 is a little concerning. So I think there's a real opportunity to keep building those relationships on campus, in the community, on Long Island. And so when we talk about obstacles, I look at them as things you can jump over and work around. But on the surface, there weren't obstacles that can't be overcome. So we do have some strong academic standards that again, could be viewed as obstacles when you're recruiting student athletes, but I look at those as opportunities to get the best and brightest in there. And certainly Stanford has shown, that they won't let academic requirements get in the way of success. So for me, I really didn't see any obstacles, and we do have to help our coaches by growing budgets, and you do that by raising more money and again working with President Stanley to understand the vision. But to me, I think we have a great staff in place. I met the coaches, and they're all so dedicated to their student athletes and to Stony Brook University that I just see just so many opportunities. And I'm sure as I get in there, we'll find some things that we need to work on. But on the surface, I think there's just so much upside.
And
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. And Shawn, I'm just curious. You mentioned the new arena opening up next year, and that's obviously huge for the program. As far as I know, that I haven't heard much regarding the naming rights for the new arena. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I know you've just recently been hired, but can you tell me
it's definitely it's a priority that to get a name on that arena. I know the staff has had some good conversations that they're keeping me up to speed on, and hopefully those lead to a naming opportunity. But it's definitely something that is a priority for the department. But there's been some good progress, and hopefully that's something that we can accomplish here in the short term.
Is there a timetable when you think that you might have an idea of when you get someone?
Those things are always, you're a little bit, you have to be a little patient as much as you want those things to happen immediately. But I do know, again, that there have been some great conversations, and the staff has done a fantastic job with, putting, proposals together, and they've had people who are interested. And, hopefully before I get up there, there's some good news. But if not, I'm going to help them as much as I can to get that done. And it's definitely, I think there's a lot of interest in it. it's just a matter of finding that right fit. And those things, sometimes I've been involved in those. They can take time, but ultimately it's about getting that right partner to join the university in that way.
I think another thing that kind of struck me was, obviously your background with fundraising. I had quite a bit of success with that, both at Oregon State and at UCLA. And I think coming to the East Coast, and especially to New York, I think one of the big differences that has perhaps kind of hindered Stony Brook and other state universities from growing quicker, not that they've grown all that slowly, but has been the fact that New York has some pretty tough laws governing the amount of public spending that can take place on Division I athletics. And I know that's kind of an added, complication coming from two states where, I would imagine that the funding is a lot perhaps easier to come by. And so I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that additional wrinkle in terms of making sure that the programs have the adequate resources to continue building.
Well, I was pleasantly surprised to learn of the current system in which that the state appropriations that led to Laval Stadium, led to Stony Brook Arena, have led to so many wonderful things on that campus. I'm used to having to go out and raise the money and finance the rest through bonding. But I think where the opportunities are to work with our partners, work with the donors to kind of come up with a plan that will help set us up for the long term. We certainly can't rely upon state funding, and that's
sure.
That's one thing that everywhere I've been, that as the cost of doing business at this level goes up, typically your state funding does not increase along with it. So you have to have strong fundraising programs, and that to me is where there are huge opportunities to get more people involved. And a part of that is just developing a plan and making sure that you're not doing things piecemeal, but that you really look at things with a long-term perspective, and so that your what you do today will ultimately have an impact 5 years down the road, but that you're really working towards something. A lot of donors who are able to give significant gifts nowadays, they want to see that vision. They want to see what your long-term approach is going to be, and then you typically they'll make that investment if they see that it's worthwhile. So from my standpoint, it's just going to be working with staff and working with our stakeholders to see the vision for our athletics program, and hopefully they'll invest in it so that we can then build a program from there. Because state funding is difficult to rely upon, and as generous as the state has been, and as wonderful as that process has been, there are a lot of needs in the state of New York and within the system. So we're going to work on trying to raise more money to supplement those budgets so that we can continue to stay competitive and win those conference championships.
You talked about your vision to kind of get rid of the stigma of what's a Seawolf and have everyone around the country know what a Seawolf is. What are some ways you were hoping to help the brand of Stony Brook spread across the country?
That's a great question. I think we're very unique in that we're not a directional university. I think so we can capitalize on the Stony Brook name, the fact that no one else is a Seawolf. I mean, I know Alaska Anchorage is, but it's unique. It's a unique mascot, and I think what we just have to do is look at opportunities, look at how we partner with the university in its recruitment efforts of students, and really have a strong relationship with the Alumni Association to spread our message across the country. We're going to have to get our coaches out and make sure that the not just the name Stony Brook, but what also it stands for. You have limited marketing resources, so we can't plaster up the Joey Harrington billboard in Times Square the way Oregon did many years ago, which I think really got Oregon on the radar for the country. And so I think while things like that are wonderful, they make a big splash, we have to look at where our opportunities will be, and certainly a lot of that comes from winning. When you win, people know who you are. Certainly in 2012 with the College World Series appearance, people knew who Stony Brook was, and people still know who Stony Brook is based upon that. So a lot of it is going to be the way our student-athletes represent themselves, but I think things that we will do on the marketing side to generate some news, to generate some buzz, I think is very important, because that's, I've seen what the University of Oregon did, and we certainly don't want to emulate them per se, but it's taking elements of that and really incorporating them into what fits Stony Brook and what allows us to get our name out there. But we have to leverage the partnerships that we have with the university, with the Alumni Association, even with the medical center, to make sure that Stony Brook Athletics and the Seawolves gets out off of Long Island, out of New York, and really across the country. So we'll always work on that and always push our message out there, but winning certainly helps a lot in doing that.
I know you have a lot of connections, obviously, with the Pac-12. Do you think one way you could kind of help spread the brand might be scheduling some more non-conference games with the Pac-12, possibly, for football and basketball and other sports, of course?
Yeah, it sure can. I mean, scheduling is, and that's a tough thing. I mean, again, that was something that Coach Peichel and I were talking about today. When you achieve the level of success that our men's basketball program, just using that program as an example, the big teams don't want to play you all the time, because it's definitely, we're at a point with our men's basketball program we can go in and beat someone, so it makes scheduling a little bit difficult. And while I think it's great that I think you definitely want to continue to play FBS schools in football. I think you have to be smart about travel budgets and that sort of thing. But I do think playing in events like preseason NIT and other types of events with major programs does help you, but ultimately you've got to beat those teams, and that's again how you really make a name for yourself in terms of on the national landscape. And with recruits, that's where you really also need to make sure you're marketing to recruits. And we've done some unique things here at Oregon State with our football program in particular to really market to that demographic. Kids are looking for where they're going to spend their next 4 to 5 years, and you have to sell to them as much as you do to that season ticket holder or that fan, and you just have to make yourself very relevant in this landscape. There's so many things out there. What is it that's going to make Stony Brook stand out? Maybe it is playing a Pac-12 school or a Big Ten school, but they've got to want to play us first. And as I've seen, that can be difficult when you have the level of success that we've had.
All right, Shawn, thank you so much for taking the time. I don't want to take up too much more. Last question I have for you. I understand you're back out in Corvallis now. I wonder what your time frame is for transitioning to Stony Brook. I mean, is this a matter of months? Is this going to be, targeting for the summer, the fall semester?
Yeah, I will definitely. Right now, Donna Woodruff and I are working on hiring a women's basketball coach, so that is the number one order of business, and she and I will be working on that. I will probably be out there once or twice before the end of June, and then looking at sometime toward late June, getting out there and getting going. As you can imagine, eager to get started. Certainly have been talking with staff at Stony Brook and kind of getting the ball rolling a little bit back here, but want to finish up strong here at Oregon State. But I'll probably be out there within 5-6 weeks.
All right, Shawn Heilbron, the new athletics director at Stony Brook University. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk to us.
Adam, thank you very much, and look forward to being out there and seeing everybody in Stony Brook Red very soon.
All right, so thanks again for Shawn Heilbron taking the time to speak with us earlier this week. There's a lot to kind of decompress there. Managed to speak on quite a few number of topics, but I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts about maybe the biggest or maybe the two biggest takeaways from what he had to say.
Well, for me, I would say the biggest takeaway for me is that he is really a lot like Fiore. He has a lot of the same vision of Fiore. He wants this program to be big time, wants it to be the best it can be. But I think what's important is that, for now at least, he appears to have a good relationship with President Sam Stanley, and I think that's very important because I know that there are rumblings that Fiore didn't exactly see eye to eye with Stanley at times. That there was kind of a I guess you could say a sense of disconnect between the two parties. So I think Fiore, before the scandal, he pretty much had this program going in the right direction. They really just needed to find someone with similar ambitions, and they found it in Heilbron.
Yeah. For me, similar. I really like that him and Sam Stanley seem to have a pretty good relationship so far. Obviously, Sam Stanley hiring Shawn Heilbron, whereas opposed to Jim Fiore was with Kenny. But I think it was interesting with this interview. This came about a week after his previous interview where he came to Stony Brook and spoke in the press conference. And it seemed like he was a little bit more realistic in this interview, whereas he seemed to be pretty lofty with football in the press conference. This time he was like, well, we've had games with only 5,000 fans out. We need a much better student turnout. And I think this is good that he kind of understands where the Stony Brook program is at. And I think he still had pretty high sights. He said he wants Stony Brook to be Long Island's program, which I definitely think is a great goal. We've seen with the last year that Buffalo now has, state of New York on their jersey. They're trying to be, New York's team, which may not be a great idea so far with, Syracuse and some other pretty great schools in New York. So I think it's good that he wants to, kind of control New York. Control Long Island. So yeah, that's my opinion on him so far.
Yeah, I think the interesting statistic, that he brought up in talking about that was just the population that Long Island has, which is, there's a lot of people that live there, and not very much competition for Stony Brook. Certainly not for football. It's the only Division I program, on Long Island at this point. Now that Hofstra's is done, but his point was that Long Island's home to about 3 million people. The state of Oregon is home to not very many more. Also, I think it's like 3.5 million people at this point. And, Oregon, has both Oregon and Oregon State, both of which managed to be very successful, for that region. And so there's no reason, that Stony Brook doesn't have an opportunity to kind of seize control of that, huge, population of people that live on the island. And then you start factoring in the fact that, if you count Brooklyn and Queens as part of the island too, that population doubles, to over 7 million people, more than doubles. So there is definitely a lot of opportunity for Stony Brook to take advantage of the population that Long Island has. I think one of the Jason, you mentioned, talking a little bit about ambition, and obviously it's hard to kind of talk about next steps and moving on to the FBS when, as you said, and as Shawn said, it's still a struggle to get, Laval Stadium filled on a consistent basis. But it was, I thought, kind of interesting to hear that President Stanley in particular was the one who has, ambitions to kind of take Stony Brook and kind of point it in the direction of possibly getting an invitation to one of the major NCAA Division I conferences, which would be a huge deal, for the region, because the region, as it stands, doesn't really have one, and certainly not for football. I guess the closest you could look at is, I guess, Rutgers, although, I don't know how the rest of the Big Ten feels about them joining that conference this year. And then perhaps Syracuse, too. Their basketball program certainly has been one of the better Division I basketball programs in recent years, but football has continued to lag behind. So, it's interesting to see that, that's something that at least the university is thinking about in the back of their minds and, trying to kind of set themselves up for strategically in the coming, we're talking about, at least a decade out at this point. But it's interesting to hear that that's, a consideration at least.
Yeah, I did a piece for The Statesman last fall about the homecoming tradition and whatnot. And it surprised me to see that even less than 10 years ago, we had less than 6,000 fans at homecoming. And now Stony Brook's worst game is 6,000 fans. So it is incredible, and he talked a lot about it, how fast Stony Brook has risen. And also I thought it was important that he said that Sam Stanley shares the vision with him of becoming an FBS program at some point in the future.
Yep.
So I think that's definitely big for this school and the athletic program, that they're sort of coming together in respect. Yeah, another thought on baseball. Last week, I believe they were in the top 30 ranked in the country, so they definitely won't be unknown going in. I believe they were 29 this week, And I'm sure next week that'll go up with a couple wins over Hartford. So they definitely will be on the radar for a lot of teams. And if they do make it into regionals, it could be very interesting.
I think it's to me it's so encouraging to see the baseball team climb back up in the rankings like that, because I think that after there's kind of a worry in the back of my mind that that team they assembled for the College World Series, and I guess you could say it's true that it was really just a thing of just everything came together perfectly that year, and then they managed to get like Travis Jankowski, like he was an example of a guy who was the ultimate sleeper coming out of high school, where he just really needed to work on his hitting, and he improved on it big time. And now suddenly he was, I believe, a late first-round pick in the Major League Draft. And in that draft year, like, it goes back to what I said, that was a culmination of a perfect year. I believe they had 6 or 7 guys drafted from that team.
Yeah.
I don't think you're ever going to see. Like, I don't think that's an impressive feat for a power conference team in general. So, but it's really encouraging to see them back in the top 30, because to me it shows that Coach Sank he's really building something for the future. He's really starting to build on the momentum from the College World Series.
Yeah, that's good, because I mean you have some veteran guys who were on the College World Series team 2 years ago, and now you also are seeing the results of the increase in recruiting as a result of the College World Series now. So you have some really talented young guys that Stony Brook may have not been able to get before, combined with some veterans who did have some experience on the big stage. So over the next couple of years, it'll be interesting to see the teams as a result of that. I think the Stony Brook could see a lot of success.
I think the big thing is making that transition from as mentioned before, being the unknown to now you're known. Now, are you going to be able to continue to find those diamonds in the rough? Because you're still not going to beat out a lot of the power conferences, but you're going to get better. You're going to have a bigger pool to choose from. It's just a matter of continuing the momentum, continuing to find good talent.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely think it cuts both ways. And to your point earlier, Adrian, that 2012 team, I think they had more draft picks by major league teams than LSU did. And LSU, of course, was the huge front runner coming into that super regional series. And yeah, I mean, I think everybody was just kind of sleeping on Stony Brook because there was no name recognition and no history of any kind of success, and a relatively weak conference when you compare it to the teams out west and the SEC. Northeast baseball always gets a hard time because of the weather, and they don't have an opportunity to play home games until later in the season. And also, I think this year, this team is the first time we're actually seeing some of the, young freshmen and sophomores who, were still in high school, as Jason said, watching Stony Brook make its run. And I do definitely think that it helped attract some of them to the school, to, a place where, they have an opportunity to make a splash on the national stage. So it'll be interesting to see, how the storyline plays out. Obviously, before we talk about NCAA tournament, we need to get there. Despite Stony Brook's ranking, it's unlikely that they would get any kind of at-large bid to the tournament. And really kind of the only way forward for them is to make sure that they wrap up this conference title, which is no easy feat. Hartford, their first game yesterday featured Sean Newcomb, who is projected to not only be an MLB draft pick, but a first rounder. I've seen him going as high as one of the top 10 picks. Just a phenomenal pitcher for them. So it's entirely possible that they'll have to face him at some point again during the tournament. So we will keep a very careful eye on baseball. But looking forward a bit, joining us now, Doric Sam, who reports on Stony Brook basketball both for us at SeawolvesNation and for One Bid Wonders, is joining us now to talk about a story that was made official last week. Doric, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. How you doing, guys?
No problem. So, as you reported over a week ago, but was finally confirmed by Stony Brook University, the Seals are getting a fairly high-level recruit from Longwood University out of the Big South, Lucas Woodhouse, who actually has ties to Long Island. He played basketball here on the island in high school, and left to take the scholarship offer from Longwood, where he turned into very quickly one of their top players in the Big South. Was the number 5 player in the country in assists per game. I think was the second leading scorer for Longwood last season with over 11 points per game. Seems like a very well-rounded player that Stony Brook is getting. Unfortunately, his services are not going to be available for another year because of NCAA transfer rules. But Doric, can you talk a little bit about what Seawolves can expect from Woodhouse once he does take the court?
Well, he's a pass-first point guard with great vision. He doesn't really look to score. He did improve his jump shot from his freshman to sophomore year. Like you said, averaged 11 points per game last season, shooting 37% from three-point land. So when he gets on the court, obviously not this year coming, but a year from now, he should greatly benefit them. He's going to use this year off to improve his body. Right now, he's a bit undersized at 6'1", 165, so he's going to look to get stronger in the weight room and also to improve his defensive quickness. That's what he told me. That's his biggest focus for this year off. And practice should be something really fun to see with him, Carson Purifoy, and Deshaun Thrower. They're all going to be practicing, all going to be battling each other. And he's going to be good. Seawolves fans should be excited to see him paired alongside with Warney, even if it's just going to be for 1 year. And then they also have other athletes like Scott King, Tyrell Sturdivant, people like that. It should be really good to see.
And so, as we said, we were not going to be able to see Lucas, in a game situation for a while. But outside of him, how is this team shaping up for next year? I know there's a lot of questions every time you lose, seniors, especially, of the caliber of Dave Coley and Anthony Jackson. But, Stony Brook is returning their 2 top scorers in Warney and Purifoy. They've got some really talented freshmen who haven't had a chance to play yet, chiefly Roland Niyama, and then 2 recruits who are coming in. You mentioned both of them, Tyrell Sturdivant and Deshaun Thrower. I know it's very, very early to be talking about the basketball season, but how much hope reason is there for optimism?
There's a lot of reason for optimism, mainly because of Deshaun Thrower. He's the headline of this incoming class. He was named Mr. Basketball in the state of Michigan. I think he could probably be playing at Michigan State had he been a couple inches taller. He's just 6 foot, like barely over 6 feet. So he's really a steal for Stony Brook. And then Roland Niyama, like you said, Pikel raves about him, talked about him as like the best athlete he's ever recruited. He was a redshirt freshman this year, and I've heard from like Greg Logan reports that he's looked great in practice. I'm assuming he used this year to improve his body. From what I saw on him in tape from his high school days, he looked like somebody who could create his own shot. The Seawolves haven't had much of that in recent years. He has a nice mid-range jumper, and he should be somebody that could step in and probably enter the starting lineup next year. So, and of course, Warney's coming back. He won the American East Player of the Year last year as a sophomore, and basically while playing the last half of the season with one hand, he had that left thumb injury that greatly limited him. And of course, he's going to continue getting better. You're going to see expanded roles for people like Rayshawn McGrew, people like Scott King, who are hopefully using this offseason to improve after the awful end to last season. I know that they should be very motivated this offseason to come in and not let that happen again. So there is a lot of reason for optimism.
And Doric, I just want to go back to Woodhouse for a little bit here. My understanding is that he is going to be on scholarship for next year, even because what I thought when I heard the news that they got him, I was thinking that they already were full up on scholarship. So where's this? Is he just going to walk on this year? But I understand that he is going to be on scholarship this year. Can you tell me where that's going to be coming from?
Yes, sorry about that. I skimmed over it a little bit in the story. So when we first reported on Woodhouse coming to Stony Brook a couple weeks ago, when it wasn't official, Sam Perkins, the editor of One Bid Wonders, he reported that Anthony Mayo, who's a redshirt junior, a senior, fourth year junior, whatever you want to call him. He will not be using his final year of eligibility due to ongoing knee issues. So he's going to graduate and he will not be returning next season. So that freed up the scholarship, and that allowed Woodhouse to come in. And I think the loss of Mayo really is a big blow to the Seawolves. That gives them no seniors next year. They just have a redshirt junior in Scott King, and Mayo used to spell Warney. He used to come off the bench for Warney, and while you lost a lot on the offensive side when Mayo would come in, Mayo was as good, if not a better defender than Warney. He might not have been the defender he was in his freshman year, blocking shots and all that, but he was a great post defender, a really good team defender. So that's going to hurt them a little bit next year.
I'm just out of curiosity. Do you know which kind of came first? Stony Brook learning that Mayo could no longer play, or that Woodhouse would be coming in? Do you know which kind of happened first?
I don't know for sure which happened first. The way I found out, the timeline in which I found out, was that Woodhouse was coming in, and then in reporting the story, we were trying to figure out where that scholarship was coming from. And Sam Perkins, who's never wrong, since I've known him, it was his sources that told him that Mayo's knee issues were just too much for him to handle, and he won't be returning next year. So I don't know officially which came first. I would assume that the Mayo thing came first, because that's how they would know that they have another scholarship open to offer to Woodhouse. So I would assume that that's what happened first.
And do you think with the loss of Mayo, as you said, that he was an important player and that he was able to spell Wardy, how does the Seawolves front court depth look this year? Because to me, it might be a little thin this year. Because I believe after Warney, who else is there?
I agree. It's definitely thin. You have the incoming freshman's third event. He's 6'8". You have Shawn McGrew. He's 6'7", and Scott King, who's about 6'9", 6'10". But Scott King needs to build up his body to be able to play the center position. His third event's a freshman. While he's definitely athletic, you don't know how much playing time he's gonna be able to get. And Shawn McGrew is a bit undersized. You could see him at the four, maybe even at the 3. So it's going to be definitely interesting to see how they use all these big men. And like we talked about, Thrower, who's 6'0". You have Purifoy, who's 6'1". That's a pretty small backcourt as well. It's going to be interesting to see how much time they get on the floor together. I know Piker likes to play the 3-guard system. Last year he usually had some combination of Coley, Jackson, Purifoy, and Ahmad Walker on the floor at the same time. But now you have to see who's going to play alongside Warney and who's going to come in for Warney in the front court. So.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues that Stony Brook was really kind of grappling with last season, that they weren't really 2 years ago, was the depth on the bench. And I know the talent that was there last year, obviously there were some injuries. Purifoy was out for a few games. Warney, as you said, Doric was playing injured for almost half the season. So I think it'll be interesting to see if they are able to turn that again into a strength. It was 2 years ago, when Stony Brook's bench was able to contribute 20 points a game in some days. And last year, I think you'd be lucky if they cracked, double digits oftentimes. And so I think, obviously, Shawn McGrew will be a big part of that. I'm interested to see the development of Chris Braley, who's shown a lot of talent, in limited play last season. And then, there are a couple other wild cards too, and Cam Mitchell and you mentioned the incoming freshman. I think Sean Thrower and Sturdivant will probably get quite a bit of playing time, right from the get-go. But it'll be interesting to see if Pikel is able to turn the bench into a strength again for the Seawolves and give an opportunity for Warney and others to get some rest instead of having to play 35, 40 minutes a game.
Definitely. Like we said, we can only hope for improvements this offseason. Scott King was somebody who was kind of disappointing last season. Started off shooting very well from beyond the arc, but then that number dipped to about 30% during conference play. And also on defense, everybody knows that your playing time when you play for Pikel is going to be determined by how well you play on defense. And some of them were defensive liabilities, to be honest. So it'll be interesting to see how hard they've worked and how they come in for next season.
Just out of curiosity, where do you kind of see Nyama fitting in position-wise? I know he's a guy who could probably play anywhere 2 through 4. Where do you see, especially with the loss of McAllister and Mayo, where do you think he could play next year position-wise?
I personally would like to see him at the 3 and Ahmad Walker at the 2. I don't believe in playing small, really, unless your opponent, it's a matchup thing, you know. But I don't personally see how you can put Deshaun Thrower and Carson Purifoy on the court at the same time and have another guard at the 3. I would prefer to see Purifoy at the 1, Walker at the 2, and Niama at the 3, and some combination of Warney, McGrew, and Sturdivant in the front court. I'd like to see them play bigger. Like I said, I watched a little bit of tape on Niama from his high school days. He really has a nice mid-range jumper, a really good athlete, and this redshirt year only could benefit him. So it'll be interesting to see how much of a focal point he is of the offense. From what I've seen, he reminded me of kind of Muhammad El Amin, who could really create his own shot off the dribble. I know Adam remembers him a lot. So
miss that dude.
Yeah, definitely. So it'll be interesting to see how much they use him on the offensive side. But like we said, everything goes to how you play defense. But when you play for Pikel, your playing time is going to be determined by how well you play on the defensive end.
Definitely.
All right, Doric, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. So obviously we're looking forward to the basketball season, both for the team and also for the new arena. Everybody's really anxious to see what games are going to be like with 4,000 other people. People, I think, don't remember basketball outside of Pritchard Gymnasium. It's been a few years. Thank you so much for taking the time. We'll be sure to have you on again.
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Take care.
All right, so I do think that there is definitely some reason for optimism. I think also the rest of the conference has taken a hit, particularly Vermont. I know we spoke about this a little bit kind of off the air earlier, but Vermont is losing their entire starting lineup from last season. They were all seniors, all of them graduated, which is not to say they don't have underclassmen talent. And I'm sure they've done a phenomenal job recruiting to remain one of the top teams for so long in the conference. But I think it's kind of setting it up pretty well so far for Stony Brook. We'll have to see how the rest of the summer and fall plays out. But I'll be interested to see what the schedule looks like too. I know Stony Brook's managed to get a couple of big names on their non-conference schedule the last few years. We had Indiana last year for the second time. Be curious to see who Pikel and Heilbron are able to convince to let us come in and hopefully surprise some people, raise some eyebrows. All right, so talking about basketball is getting way ahead of ourselves. We haven't played a single down in football yet, but we're just about 100 days away, I think, from opening day on Thursday, August 28th. Football, is looking pretty good. We spoke about this last week in our non-episode episode. And I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions. We spoke about a little bit about the quarterback situation. We don't yet know who is going to be our opening day starter. Connor Bednarski got most of the snaps during the spring game, but there are still, I think, a couple of variables and unknowns that could potentially shake things up. Not the least of which is Kinder, the transfer who's coming in from Syracuse. It'll be interesting to see how he shapes up in fall practices, summer practices leading up to August. And the running game too, is a big question mark. Jason, I know you're pretty high on Stacey Bedell, who transferred back to Long Island from UMass, and he looked great during the spring game. Marcus Coker is always a question mark. He's still not too far removed from one of the better underclassmen performances in the Big Ten at Iowa as a running back. He racked up, I think it was 1,300 yards or something in his sophomore year there. Came in, played behind Miguel Masonette for a while, injured himself last season, so we haven't seen very much of him, honestly, in the last couple of seasons. But there's still obviously tremendous talent there. I think you definitely expect him to be a big part of that running game. Adrian, I wonder if you have any thoughts as to what the biggest potential upside is for this football team.
Well, I think the biggest question right now is, as mentioned, the quarterback competition. Right, as you guys mentioned, right now, if I had to, I'm getting ahead of myself right now, but if I had to guess who would be the day one starter, it would be Bednarski, because he not only will have an advantage on Kinder for this year, but he was here last. I believe I also have 2 years of eligibility left, and I think that would be very important for Coach Priori to want someone who you can kind of build around for next year. And it's obviously something that, like, if Kinder's better, then I think he gets it just because that's the nature of college football. But I think that the fact that because he redshirted last season, that's going to play a pretty big factor into what Priory decides to go with for the upcoming season.
Definitely. Obviously we'll be keeping an eye on how the fall progresses, and I think the next big date on the football calendar is the CAA Media Day, which is coming up in mid-July. So it'll be an opportunity to not only hear what's going on with Coach Priori and the Seawolves, but also what we can perhaps expect from the rest of the conference, and see how Stony Brook is able to perform in their second full season in the CAA. Last year, I think, it was probably a disappointment for Stony Brook fans who had come to expect winning seasons, certainly, if not postseason bids, the last few years. Honestly, it wasn't a terrible season. I think we finished 5-6. We played some very, very tough opponents. We had Towson and Villanova both on the schedule last season. Maine, which ended up winning the CAA title and advancing, I think, into the second round of the CAA playoffs, third round maybe even. I think this season we avoid Villanova, I think. Is that right? I'm not 100%. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but this season actually looks like it might be a little bit kinder. We're at Elon, I know, which is another newcomer to the conference. This will be their first year as full members of the CAA. We also have a game at UConn. That's our FBS team, our FBS game this year. We're up at New Hampshire. That program also has a pretty recent history of success and making appearances in the FCS playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see how year 2 goes. I think assuming we're able to keep people healthy, which was a struggle last year. I certainly don't think this team is any worse than last year. And I think, if anything, we've addressed some of the key holes from a year ago. So it'll be interesting to see how that shapes up, how the running game shakes out, and the defense too. I think that was still a huge highlight last year. Some really showed some really tremendous talent at being able to keep people, especially in the red zone. The red zone defense has been phenomenal. So yeah, a lot of different storylines will be.
I think another storyline you could add on to there is going to be the kicking game. So I know last year the passing game was pretty good, but the kicking game was really kind of disappointing. Especially, I remember the Villanova game where they were struggling to hit extra point attempts.
Yeah.
Jason, have you had a chance to see how do you think that's shaping up for this year, for next season?
Well, I know they did get a big recruit at the punting spot. Supposedly the 14th best punter in the country. I'm not quite sure how you evaluate that, but Definitely interesting. Probably maybe one of the biggest recruits Stony Brook's had on the football end, and it's a punter, which is not sure how to feel about that. But I'm pretty excited for the defense too. The defensive backfield gets back Captain Devontae Anderson, which is someone we really missed last year, especially after Reuben Johnson went down. He was a guy who had 2 interceptions at Syracuse, so definitely a playmaker on the defensive end. And there was a lot of balls last year that went the other way of Winston Longden that was caught right at the sideline. And Devontae Anderson's a guy with a lot of closeout speed that could really prevent that from happening. And I think that was a big adjustment for Stony Brook going to the CAA, the better quality quarterbacks they had to face, especially at Villanova. We saw how big that was for Stony Brook to try and stop. So I think him combined with, I believe, sophomore in Naeem Cheeseborough, or possibly a junior now, they can make a really big impact on the defensive backfield. And also Devontae Anderson and Stacey Bedell on special teams. Both those guys are guys we didn't have last year. Make a huge impact, especially after losing Miguel Masonette. We lost a lot of talent on special teams, and those are 2 guys who we could see make a big impact. And so, just not just on offense, there's a lot of storylines elsewhere too.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned Longden. I think he actually got some invites from NFL teams to work out for them. After the draft. I think the assumption is that he'll be back this year, but yeah, definitely tons of talent still left. On the defensive end of the ball as well. In terms of receivers, we lost Malcolm Eugene, who was just maybe the best receiver in the CAA. If we had a quarterback that was, not to knock on the ground too much, but if we had a quarterback who was able to kind of more consistently get the ball where he needed it to go, I can only imagine the kind of numbers that Eugene could have put up last season. But we do have Will Tye coming back, who was great last year at the tight end. Jari Level, who we didn't see very much of last year. I know he was battling injuries. Also comes in. He was a transfer from FBS Idaho, I believe. We'll surely be seeing more of him this year as well. So yeah, I think again, it's hard to make any kind of judgments, this far out. But as I said, it's hard to imagine this team, performing the way that last year's team did. There seems to be a lot more options on the field for Priori on both ends of the ball. So we'll definitely be keeping track of who's coming in and who's coming out and how people are performing throughout the summer heading into the fall. And definitely we'll be interested. Hopefully, we'll get Coach Priori to come on at some point, one of these next few episodes, to talk a little bit about his thoughts about the team that he's got heading into the season. All right, so I think we've covered everything so far. Again, congratulations to men's baseball. They wrapped up the regular season title this afternoon with a 4-2 win over Hartford. They will be the top seed when America East tournament gets underway at UMass Lowell in the coming week. And they will be playing for a chance to make another appearance at the NCAA tournament. Thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully, we're able to do this on a consistent basis, and we'll see where it goes. We are wolves of the sea.